Headlines.
Welcome to Freshly Pressed. Smooth 98.1. We are gone past 7:30 for Thursday morning, and this is Freshly Pressed on Smooth Breakfast. I'm Sope Martins, and for the next half hour, I've got Cheta Nwanze in on Freshly Pressed to for the news analysis as we discuss what is making its way into our dailies and also on the international news that has come in to our dailies. Cheta, welcome to the show. Welcome to Freshly Pressed. Thank you for joining me.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
All
Good
right.
morning.
Make sure you join our conversation. All right.
How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, Cheta. How are you doing?
I'm good. Did you sleep well?
I'm going to turn off your mic in a second. So make sure you join our conversation. We are streaming live already up on youtube.com/smooth981 FM Lagos. You can leave your comments up on the live chat. I'm sure you'll want to. You'll also be able to send tweets in. Use the hashtag freshlypressed981 and tweet at us at smooth981FM. And of course, we'll be taking WhatsApp messages on 0809 4440981. So, Chesa, let's get straight into the news. This one comes in from the Punch newspaper via Reuters. Reuters reports Nigerian army running secret mass abortion program, according to a report by Reuters, which came out in which the news agency claimed that the Nigerian army has carried out forced abortions on female victims of Boko Haram or Islamic State and ISWAP members since 2013, with the report saying that at least 10,000 pregnancies had been illegally terminated. This is based on accounts from 33 victims' documents, military documents that they had gathered. Reports from hospital staff as well as security officials. A lot went into the making of this report, and already the military has denied this, actually denying it days before the report came out. But Cheta, if we can go by what has been reported, this is very big news.
It's actually very huge, and if it is true, war crimes have been committed. Um, but like so many war stories, an uncomfortable number of war stories. It's full of so many parts, and it is not clear cut. This is speaking. I read the entire reports yesterday. I had the privilege of being in Lagos traffic, so I had time on my hands. So I read the entire thing when it was published, and so I had so many mixed feelings while reading the reports. And towards the end of the report, in the section which they called for the good of society, there's something that someone said which resonated very strongly with me. He said people would keep insisting. This is speaking about a potential child, one of the potentially 10,000 children or more that were terminated. He said people in Nigeria will keep saying or will keep insisting this child is a terrorist, this child is a terrorist. There's power in words, and that power tends to come back on the child. And that resonated with me. I completely agree with it because I have sat in an interview with a girl who was kidnapped by Boko Haram, forcibly married to a Boko Haram soldier, raped so many times by that Boko Haram terrorist, eventually was able to escape, got back to her village pregnant, and then was ostracized by her family and her community because of that pregnancy and abandoned. The place where I wasn't the one who conducted the interview, but I was sitting in it. The place where she was interviewed, it was a dingy place that it was the small resources that a charity, a Lagos-based charity for the record, could organize. And that charity is always looking for money. So questions have to be asked about how long that charity can cope with her and the baby that eventually came. Because of the behavior of her community, the people that she had known all her life, she had started to yearn for the man who raped her because at least he treated her with some degree of kindness, unlike what she saw when she got back home. And unfortunately, in so many respects, again, these things are not clear cut, so it's very difficult to say. But he was dead. By this time he was dead. Now let us try and imagine this girl's future. If these charities should not be able to raise money, even if they're able to raise money, for how long can they keep her? How many of them? How many girls like her can they help? Let's try and imagine her future cut off from the other people that she knows in life, and then imagine the child's future. There's something called self-fulfilling prophecy. If everybody are in the girl's orbit keeps telling her son that, oh, your father was a terrorist, therefore you're a terrorist, chances are that he will end up as a terrorist. Now let's put there's something that I'd want to bring out there here. There's a phrase, or there's a small statement in the piece, and it's a very lengthy piece. It takes time to read, but so Reuters did it with quite some rigor. Um, there was something that they said when they put the findings of their investigation to the Nigerian army. They said, and I'm quoting, Nigerian military leaders denied the program has ever existed and said that Reuters reporting was part of a foreign effort to undermine the country's fight against the insurgents. For me, this attitude that we have as a people to always go on the defensive, it actually hurts us because it prevents us from looking at ills in our society, potential ills, and correcting them. What does Reuters have to gain by undermining Nigeria's fight against insurgents? We have one of the raped women who now lives outside the country and so was not afraid of giving her name, Bintu Ibrahim. She said very clearly that she would have liked to keep her baby. She was forced. We have another, Fati, who did not want to be named, so they gave her the name Fati because she's still in Nigeria. She implied that she didn't want the baby. She didn't say it explicitly, but she implied it. So, in that, if you have these two cases, one saying I would have liked to keep the baby, and the other one saying or implying that I wouldn't have liked to keep the baby, there's nothing wrong in asking them. These are such things, and bear in mind that yes, abortion is illegal in Nigeria, but these are things that exceptions can be made. These girls were raped. That is what happened to them. So yes, if one of them says that she doesn't want the baby, then an abortion is not out of place in that thing. But forcing an abortion, if true, the first thing that we missed as a society is that what the girls need is rehabilitation and counseling, essentially therapy, not something traumatic to add to their already traumatized life. Bear in mind that back in 2017, the UK Guardian did an extensive investigation that shows that many people who had been rescued from the insurgents were opting to go back to areas still controlled by the insurgents. It's this kind of things that's happened that make people take such decisions that seem illogical. I think it's important to point out that further down the line, the Reuters story itself pointed out that some girls were given a choice, although it didn't give any proportions, but some girls were actually given a choice of as to whether they wanted to have abortions performed. But Reuters themselves pointed out that they couldn't determine how many of these girls were given the choice.
Now, Cheta.
Now, on a personal note,
Mhm.
yeah, I have a lot to say because this
I
story,
know.
this story is very major. On a personal note, I'm torn about it. That's the honest truth. Again, I gave the example of the girl whose interview I sat in. A part of me supports the program in itself. It's a broad program. Um, because of the fact that, again, because I have seen some of these things, I'm very aware of the kind of stigma that these girls face, and it's something it's something that they can't shake off. It's true, no fault of theirs. If you read the story of Bintu, they told her story. She was from Mongono, or she's from Mongono, Boko Haram attacked Monguno, and she and some women banded together to try to escape. And instead, it was a trap. There were Boko Haram terrorists waiting just outside the city limits for them, and they basically carried all of them, put them on a boat into the Lake Chad, and rowed them away. And when they got to the island that was the Boko Haram stronghold, they were all married off, in quotes. But a part of me is filled with some form of revulsion about the manner in which this program was conducted. I think that the idea behind the program, which is the terminations, it's not necessarily a bad thing because of the societal impact, but at least be open about it. Now, on another note, final notes, um, I'm kind of impressed that a Nigerian organization, in this case the army, was able to run a clandestine program for 10 years without it leaking, and the records were kept. For me, it speaks to a latent organizational capacity that exists, and it's something that we should look into tapping into for the good of society. If we have this capacity, we can actually make it good.
Okay, now just a couple of things. Well, we don't have much time because we do have other stories. The first thing would be when we talk about forced abortions, there's also the health implications, which I don't think we touched on, and the fact
Yes,
that some of these
some of these
put on
women
children
died.
as young as 12, and yes, the
Yeah,
fact that
some of them died.
exactly, abortions carried out up to 8 months of pregnancy has serious health complications. And like you said, some of the
Yes.
women died. There's that. The second thing being, okay, look into the future. And as the report comes out and makes its way into the world and the information is disseminated, we've seen the military saying very vigorously that denying this very vigorously. But obviously they have um, they have the, what's the word I'm looking for, the interest to do this, because what happens then if what happens to the trust in the military with this kind of news that comes out?
Well, I
Is
think
this
one thing
going
we
to
need to
move anything?
I think no, it doesn't move much. With as a society, with our security agencies, we don't have much trust anyway. So this would only serve to be confirmation. It only serves as confirmation bias for quite a number of people. That what you are going to see, the reaction you're going to see from too many Nigerians, I dare say a majority of Nigerians, will be a shrug and something along the lines of no be them before. um but and again, this is where, like any war story, it gets complicated. um there are not many people, I suspect there are not many people in this country who will disagree with the actions of aborting those kids,
I'm looking at a
because
message right now that I will be reading later.
yeah, because many people, many people in Nigeria, remember that Nigeria is a culturally conservative country, and very many people in Nigeria will hold on to the belief that whatever the father is likely to be the son's fate. What we need to understand is that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy based on the actions that we take as a society. So, yes, many of the children who have been born and were fathered by terrorists are very likely to end up in such a trade, if you can call it that, simply because their mothers have been ostracized. And that is where it starts from. What
With stigma
society
comes a
should
limitation of opportunities.
Exactly. With stigma comes the limitation of opportunities. What we should have done as a society is find a way to embrace those girls, tell them, oh, we are so sorry for what we allowed to happen to you. Because it was, at the end of the day, it was the failures of our society that actually forced them into this situation. And the moment we are able to do that, we're able to rehabilitate properly, then the cycle, the wheel, has a chance of being broken. Unfortunately, we haven't done that adequately. So we are in a situation where the whole thing will just probably keep just going round and round in a very sad spiral.
All right, let's look at the messages coming in. This one from Emeka from Ikeja says, Cheta is neither here nor there on this. Truth be told, Those abortions were for the greater good of Nigeria. So let's call a spade a spade. Tony from Ikeja says the least a decent government can do is to genuinely fight to eliminate terrorism, banditry, and kidnapping. Investigating the termination of victims' pregnancies is absolutely suspicious. The majority of those wanting to keep such babies would be the criminals and their sponsors. He goes on to say, in my village, the offspring of a criminal is always observed with side eye. Yinka Bolu says, fantastic point of view by Cheta as usual, but we can't ignore the fact that some Western media outfits have been complicit in saliently creating chaos in some cases, but rather than blankly deny or refute it, the Nigerian military brass should investigate it. Also, they should be given a choice to decide whether they want to keep such pregnancy or not. For me, I prefer the pregnancies are terminated to save them from impending obvious stigma that would come with it. And Dakpo from Satellite Sound says, Lord's your analysis. Cheta says, especially that we need more level-headed people like you. This one comes in from Otunuga, who says, it's not all the comments and observations made by these foreign human rights organizations regarding our fight against terrorism that we need to take seriously. If we continue to listen to all the conspiratorial reportage, we will not know when all these terrorists will overrun us. Kudos to our military men and women. And there are more messages coming in. Orov says, I think the military was on point on this. They should just have been open about it. And Lady Rose says this story is just sad and shocking, and it's damage to the already damaged, violence on the already violence. And B from Lucky says, good attempt at analyzing the issue, Cheta. It's actually not an easy issue to discuss. If an underage girl gets pregnant, it's preparing her for a life of trauma and depression. What we don't know is if the parents gave consent on their behalf. I generally find the army more responsible than any of our other security operatives. That's B from Lucky. Let's move on now. So this next article comes in from The Nation. 2023 court dismisses suit challenging Tinubu's candidacy. A federal court sitting in a federal high court sitting in Abuja, dismissing the case against the APC presidential candidates. It's the latest. It's the fourth case to be dismissed by courts in recent weeks, with the justice presiding over this, Justice Fadima Aminu Murtala, describing the plaintiff, Elder Ngozika Ihoma, as, and I quote, a meddlesome interloper having no locus standi to institute the suit. Your thoughts, Cheta?
I think that the nation botched this story. The story was light on details as to what Ngozi Iweoma based his lawsuit on, and given that his lawsuit was filed on the 9th of June, it clearly is not one of the recent lawsuits, and there's been a few recent ones, especially after a story came out about Mr. Tinubu's alleged affiliation with drug dealers and all of that stuff. That's the one that's what's bearing. Considering the antecedents of the nation, I suspect that this dismissal was propped up just to kind of like give the impression that Mr. Tinubu has overcome all the legal stuff against him. But now, by the time you dig into the details, no. Starting with the date that this was filed, this was clearly is not one of the more contentious recent ones. So really, there is nothing to it.
All right, let me read a couple of messages from the different platforms up on YouTube. Olawale says, Wale from Ikeja says, apt analysis on the Reuters reports. And on Twitter, Digi Taya says, great suggestion to give the ladies a choice between keeping their pregnancies from the terrorists and aborting. However, there's the stigma that comes from openly requesting an abortion in a society where religious values frown against abortion. It's a lose-lose situation. All right, we move on to our next story. Now, this one in from This Day newspaper. Lawmakers ask federal government to resume $14.4 billion East-West Rail Line project. The House of Representatives urging the federal government to reverse its earlier decision on that rail line project by continuing the implementation because of the economic importance to the nation.
Yeah, So, I mean, when I read this story, the first thing that came to my head was, what are the lawmakers on? We're in the lame duck phase of this government, so nothing is going to happen. But it's good if it's thinking about it further. It would be good if at least it enters the record, if we do anything about records anyway, because from the most basic point of view, from first principles, the Lagos Onitsha routes is the most important economic corridor in this country, and it's a travesty that we've not connected it by rail since what do you call it, since the British left us in 1960. We ought to have connected it by rail a long time ago if we were serious about development. Um, Now, if you look at a map of the existing rail system in the country, it was clearly built by the British for extraction. They extract things from the interior to the ports and then out of the country to produce and then sell back to us. That was a colonial model. If we come back to the stories on petrol, if we get to them, it's the same model basically. Extract from the interior, take to the ports, export, refine outside the country, bring back and sell to us at a higher price. If we are serious about development, the two most important corridors in Nigeria, and data supports it, at the very least $3 billion per year moves between Lagos and Onitsha. It's the highest by some distance in terms of trade in goods between any two cities in this country. They should be connected by rail. It should be a non-starter. Connect Lagos and Onitsha by rail and then stand back and watch the economy boom. As you were.
All right. All right. Oh boy. You all, I see your messages coming in about this story, about our first story, but I think I'll save them for later because we still have, we've got just a little bit of time and I would like to take some more. So, Cheta, you mentioned that petrol story. Let's go into it already. I'll just find it now. Hold on. And now I can't find it. So let's move on. Now, the one that will, here it is from Business Day. Petrol imports rise by 173%. Scarcity persists. The notion is that we're trying to wean ourselves off of imported fuel, but then we're seeing the numbers saying that we had an import bill that hit an all-time high of 4 trillion naira from January to September of this year. And that's the highest in 4 years. So, I'm not sure the weaning is going very well.
Yeah, again, I mean, it's first principles. Um, so what is the problem? It's clearly a pricing problem. It's not an availability problem, and we keep pretending like it's an availability problem. Um, what do you call it? What we are doing is dancing around the problem. In a fuel scarcity, as we're having now, if you are ready to pay above the official rates, which is what they call black market price, but which I would call the actual market price, you will see fuel.
But
That's a
then
non
that's
sequitur.
not a scarcity.
That's not a scarcity. Like I said, it's a pricing problem. It's kind of like the naira. If you are looking for naira at 450 to the dollar, you know go see them. But if you suddenly say, okay, I'm willing to pay 725 naira for dollar, you will suddenly see it. So one of them is the market price. The other one is the artificial price. Unfortunately, historically, the Nigerian government is obsessed with controlling the prices of two products that it doesn't have control over, which is petrol and the dollar. We need to change this. Let this thing go. Let us pay market rates and see the difference.
Okay, so Cheta, here's the thing. We need to change this, fine. But Now, we've heard talk from different presidential candidates for the 2023 elections going on to say that we will change
Yawn,
this,
yawn,
but then
yawn.
we've heard that kind of talk before. Do you think that we're actually going to see it change? Is there something that we're not seeing from the outside that makes people who go in on the inside of government into these seats, into these positions that affect these things, change their minds once
Vested
they're in there?
interests. I would quote Sanusi, the former CBN governor, on that. Vested interests. There are very powerful interests who love things the way they are, and those it will take someone with number. It will take a complete outsider for a start to go against those vested interests. And the honest truth is that none of the three major candidates, or none of the four major candidates, is a complete outsider. It will take a complete outsider to go against this vested interest and to break it. I think that probably the best thing that has happened, even though it came from an act of cowardice, is Buhari saying that the fuel subsidy will go on June 1st next year, which is 2 days after he has left office. And it's an act of cowardice because it's something he could have done before leaving. He really cannot be making rules on behalf of the next person, the person who is succeeding him. So essentially, he has put a time bomb under that person's seats, which will blow up the moment the person sits on the chair. Having said that, if I were any of the four candidates, Atiku, Kwankwaso, Obi, or Tinubu, it's something that if I win the presidency, I'll keep in place. The man before me has said that this thing, and from the moment I'm declared
there are
winner,
only four candidates, but okay, continue.
they are the four. I mean, even Kwankwaso, I shouldn't be calling
okay.
him. Yeah, but they are the four front runners. So if any of them wins, if I were the person, then from the moment I'm declared winner, even before swearing in, what I will make sure is I will make sure that everybody understands that the fuel subsidy is gone, but I will make sure that everybody knows that the announcement that the decision was made in July 2022 under Buhari, way before I got there, so that the blame will be appropriately shifted. In this case, it's a sort of like the Khrushchev letter. So maybe I should just tell that story very quickly. When Khrushchev took over from Suslov in the Soviet Union, Suslov gave him two letters. Said, if there's ever a major crisis, open the first one, and if you have another major crisis, open the second one. So 2 years later, remember, Khrushchev took over in 1956. So it was the same year. There was a major crisis, and he opened the first letter. And the first letter basically said, "Blame your predecessors." That was the year that Khrushchev denounced Stalin and said, "Oh, all of the Soviet Union's problem. Stalin did this. Stalin did that. This." And it's diverted everybody's attention. Everybody started talking about how bad Stalin was and all of that good stuff. And Khrushchev was able to tide over for another 6 years. And then the Cuban Missile Crisis happened. The Soviet Union lost that one. And suddenly people remember their economic problems and all of that. So he opened the second letter. And the second letter said, now it is your turn to write two letters for your successor. And Khrushchev didn't last a year after that. So I think it's important that our political class learn this, because one key strategic mistake that the current government made was that they had their Khrushchev letter. They opened it way too early. They ensured they opened it pretty much as soon as they hit the ground, and they didn't hit the ground running. And then they kept opening that first letter throughout. So we've gotten to a point where 7 years later, and they're still blaming PDP for things that they clearly did. So the next person should blame Buhari for removal of fuel subsidy and start blaming him from the day he's declared winner, and then leave the fuel subsidy removed.
Okay,
that would be my advice.
Nice strategy. And we have run out of time. I wanted to touch on this story from the Daily Post about the Senate debating the new CBN policy, which it has said Tuesday.
I know we're out of time, but can I say something very quickly?
Very quickly.
Okay, yesterday I was at a store in Ikeja to get some drinks, and the POS terminal was not working, and it made me. So I went to an ATM outside. This was on what was that name? Isaac John. I went to an ATM outside and withdrew the 24K needed to pay for my drinks. Under this new CBN policy, I won't be able to do that. What the Senate should be debating is not the specifics of a CBN policy. They really don't have the right to debate that. They should be debating what they have the right to do, which is removing Emefiele. The man has done so much damage. I don't know why he's still there. In that respect, they are all complicit.
And we end the show. For your messages, thank you very much for sending them in. I'll just read this last one from Dami Mola Olawi up on Twitter, who says, well, if the Smooth FM listeners can be taken as a gauge, let's just legalize abortions and stop the hypocrisy, because clearly some lives matter more than others. And we have come to the end of the show. Thank you very much, Cheta. You can find him up on Twitter at Chickster, up on Instagram at Chickster_B. And if you just search Google on Chickster, you'll be able to find him everywhere. Medium, the likes. Cheta, thank you very much.